mysterious wings. The attic of the rented townhouse smelled of cedar and the heavy, metallic tang of an approaching storm. Ilara, an art student whose life was usually defined by the charcoal smudges on her fingers and the quiet geometry of sketches, pushed aside a stack of moth-eaten tapestries. There, resting in a trunk carved from wood so dark it seemed to absorb the dim light, lay the wings. They weren't the rigid, decorative props she might have expected. They were vast, feathered in shades of obsidian and iridescent indigo, and impossibly, they were warm. When her fingers brushed the downy covert feathers, a low thrum vibrated through her palm like the purr of a sleeping predator. Against every instinct of her logical mind, Ilara lifted them. They were weightless. As she pressed the central harness against her shoulder blades, the leather straps didn't just buckle, they fused. The sensation was a searing, electric bloom that radiated through her spine, and suddenly the attic walls seemed to dissolve. Her first flight wasn't a graceful ascent. It was a violent tearing of reality. As she soared above the city's skyline, she wasn't seeing the smog-choked horizon of the present. She saw a world on fire. Flashes of another life flooded her consciousness. Skies of bruised violet, the weight of a celestial spear in her hand, and the thunderous roar of 1,000 voices calling her. She felt the cold sting of a silver blade in her back, a betrayal by the very humans she had sworn to shield, and the suffocating darkness of a prison made of silence. The wings weren't just an artifact, they were a sensory map. As she dived through the clouds, she felt the phantom pains of battles fought centuries before her birth. She learned of the shadows, primordial forces of entropy that had once threatened to unravel the world, and the guardians who had stood as the final bolt. The twist came when she retreated to her studio, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked into the mirror, expecting to see the terrified art student she knew. Instead, her reflection flickered. In the glass, her eyes didn't hold their usual hazel hue. They were pits of swirling, absolute void. The wings hadn't chosen her because of her potential. They had found their original owner. Ilara was the reincarnation of the fallen S, but the betrayal that had ended her previous life hadn't just broken her spirit, it had corrupted her essence. The very darkness she had spent an eternity fighting had found a home in the hollow spaces of her fractured soul during her centuries of imprisonment. To reclaim her full power and take to the skies as a protector once more, Ilara realized she couldn't just fight the monsters in the world outside. She had to confront the terrifying truth that the greatest shadow was now part of her own heartbeat. The wings were a gift of flight, but they were also a tether to a darkness that was waiting for her to slip, ready to turn the world's savior into its final, most devastating storm. The realization brought a sudden, unnatural drop in temperature. Outside the studio window, the streetlights didn't just flicker, they died, swallowed by a darkness that didn't belong to the night. Ilara felt the wings twitch, the indigo feathers bristling like an animal sensing a predator. A low, resonant vibration began to shake the canvases lining her walls, and the charcoal sketches of her past week, abstract shapes she now realized were forgotten constellations, began to weep black ink. Astria, a voice whispered, though it didn't come from the hallway. It sounded like it was rising from the floorboards, ancient and hungry. The cage is open, but the bird has forgotten its song. A shape began to coalesce in the center of the room, a tear in the fabric of the air that looked like static made of smoke. One of the shadows had found her. It was a fragment of the entropy she had once held at bay, a creature of pure negation that recognized the stain on her soul. It didn't attack. It beckoned. Ilara backed away, her hands grasping for a palette knife. But the weight of the wings was suddenly immense, dragging her toward the void. Darkness within her heart flared in response to the intruder, a cold, seductive power that promised to end her fear if she only stopped fighting. She stood at the precipice of her own identity, an art student clutching a tool of creation, and a fallen god harboring the very destruction she was meant to prevent. The storm hadn't just reached the city, it was finally coming for her.